Okay, folks, if you want to pull out policy 1, we're going to work our way through these. You've had them all in advance, had some time to review. So we are not going to go through each of these in detail by any means. I'll point out a few highlights as we go along, and certainly if you have questions, we can do that. On board policy number 1, which is our division foundational statements, the only changes that we made were we did some adjustment of the wording for 12 and 13, and we combined the last 2 comments into 1 sentence. So if you want to have a quick look at those.
May I ask my question?
Yes.
Okay, so on page 2 of 3, where we're talking about the logo and back in page 7.
That's in the appendix. So we're still on
policy 1.
Yep.
I don't have policy 1 as a hard copy. I'm looking at what.
That's the appendix of policy 1, but
you only have a hard copy of policy. Yes, and that's why I have to look at the screen here. So I'm looking at page 3.
Yeah, but there's policy 1 and policy 1 appendix, and we're just on policy 1 right now.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
That's good. Okay. So are there any questions about policy 1? Again, all we did was change the wording of 12-13 and what is now 16. There's no questions. Okay, then we'll do policy 1 and appendix as a motion together. So Trustee Ecker, you can ask your appendix from policy 1 question.
So it was about all applications that use the division logo. And it talks about having to go back to the superintendent or to the communications coordinator if you want to use the logo. And I just wanted clarification. Like, what does that mean? So the communication, or sorry, it's the engagement committee, we're making a newsletter and we want to put the Black Gold logo on it. Do we need to have the approval of the communications coordinator or the superintendent? Because that is what that's saying.
Yes, that is. The newsletter draft was created by, has been approved. The template has been approved by the communications.
Now, if we make a Christmas card.
Are you talking about the very last sentence on page 3?
All new and altered school logo. No, it's the use of the logo.
Okay. Sorry.
So the parameters for the use. So for example, when I was first had really strict rules about when I could use Curb's logo or not, and I'm reading that here as well. That, sorry, I'm having trouble finding that policy when I was all applications. Yeah, so
The way-
simply that, if somebody wants to use the logo on something they've done, they can't unless they have.
Right. I think when I read that one, they also say if you alter the logo.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can get around.
So what we're talking about is that all school, so if you're sending out not everything needs to be branded black gold if it's only coming to it's a school newsletter, then you can have the school logo, that sort of thing. If you're going to create something that's going out, then you need to, and if you want, the logo represents the division. So if the division is going to be represented, you need to make sure that whatever you're doing is broken. That's what I think is.
That's what I wanted to double check. That's enough. So, because previously, I think we were using the little kind of,
Which is part of the reason why this appendix.
yeah,
And just for clarification, the appendix about logo identity, while the policy committee did go through this, the communications coordinator really drafted this.
yeah, oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that that's what it meant. That will hobble some work that we've done past. And no, the logo was used.
Okay, so then a motion to approve policy 1. Trustee Eckert?
Are you putting the appendix in with that one?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Policy 1 and appendix for policy 1. All in favor? Carried. Okay, next up on the list, we have policy 8. If that's okay with you, Sandy, we'll go through all of them and do one motion for all of policy 8.
For policy 8, I had it as the appendixes as one motion and just the policy.
Sure, we can do that. Okay, so these ones were handed out today. This was a much larger document. And it's a much larger document because we spent a significant amount of time on policy 8. So hopefully we're close to the mark on this one. So this particular policy hadn't been reviewed for a little bit, and there's been some changes with our board committees. And we also, and by we, mostly Trustee Ofsty, adjusted the formatting so that it's much more consistent and complete in having all of our committees in here. So the actual policy 8 has some preamble and then lists the specific board committees being committees of our board. And then, and we'll get into the appendix in a moment, but then all of the expansion of each committee, there's full terms of reference for all of the committees in Appendix A. So we'll get to that in a moment. A couple of, yeah, so there's not really anything else to point out in terms of the actual policy other than changing the, I guess we fleshed this out in the appendix, but the major change would be under number 4. And actually we didn't make the change here. We made the change on the appendix and we didn't make the change here. On the appendix, we have committee 1 as teachers / school support staff and committee 2 as bus contractors, custodial, and maintenance. So we've reduced the advisory committee from 5 separate committees to 2 committees. Yeah. Yeah. Question? Is that just for the advisory committee, or does that carry over to the negotiating committee, only advisory.
On 2.23, which is reference to the agenda setting committee. Parking lot items for future agendas. I'm wondering if parking lot item is too colloquial, and so I'm on page 2. Like, you know what a parking lot item is. But I'm just wondering, since we're trying to make this sound official,
this
there's
in
a
the
more
terms of reference?
official way. Oh, yeah, sorry, page 2. There are more official way to talk about parking lot items.
Do you have a suggestion for wording?
People that
Parked
or
items?
deferred. Right. Well, table.
We just change it to parked. Track parked items for future agenda. You like deferred better? Yeah, we jumped to the appendix. We're on 2.2.3 of appendix A. Could possibly also just say track items for future agendas.
Yeah, there you go. And that's the numbering up here. I know, I'm feeling the same way here. Scrambling a little.
If we're on the terms of reference, I don't know if this is the right time to bring it up, but something caught my eye on page 7 under award selection committee. And it, 7.5.1. So just out of curiosity, like, do we want to designate some authority to that committee to make a decision rather than having to bring it back to the board to then hear the names and not read the application? Say that's okay, right? The committee reads the application. Like, I don't see the point of coming back and saying 3 names and saying, are you okay with that? It's not the background. We defer or whatever the word is, to give the authority to that committee to make the decision and advise the board of the decision rather than
Maybe shall
bring the
advise the board
recommendation.
Yeah. And that would perhaps solve the issue I had with that item. And really, because school bus safety week poster contest is listed as one of the words, like the word really no posters and still, so I went, okay, so we're doing that, like, let's clean up the intent.
And these did not have terms of reference previously. And so in creating them, we went with the philosophy that no committees had the authority to make any decisions on behalf of the board. That was the consensus at the meeting. I have done some follow-up meeting on that, and we absolutely have the power to assign authority to committees to make decisions. We just have to designate what those decisions are. So if that's something everyone's all in favor of, then giving the time-sensitive nature of those decisions often as well. So just for wording's sake, the committee.
But doesn't it say that they shall bring recommended recipients, that they're bringing their recommendations? Here's people like.
To me, it's not like we have to make decisions. That's just saying these are who we've recommended. I don't know. It was unclear to me. But you're only bringing one anyway, so it's not that, do you know what I'm saying?
Well, we're bringing 10 posters.
Oh,
That's right. Cool. Delivered.
yes. Oh, yeah. But even just telling us, hey, these are the kids that wanted,
Really want to hear.
no. Oh, I thought you
Because
said
you've
10.
got a bunch.
But
You've got
it's submitted
10, I've
as a,
got 10.
submitted as a report. You would have to.
Right.
I think you
Yeah.
have to give the power to the committee, that you trust them, that they picked out the best candidate. Because otherwise, why bother having the committee if you bring it here and we have to go through everyone that you've already gone through?
That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying it's nice to know, you know, someone asks us, oh, who won the most, the best buzz? Nice to just have it somewhere.
Well, yeah,
That's
no,
all
but they
I
will
mean.
bring that forward.
Yeah,
Right?
that's all I'm asking. I just want to know who, I don't care if
I don't
make the
want to
decision.
see or hear 432 bus poster names
No, and they're not gonna do
Yeah,
that. They
right.
pick 10. those
or
are the 10
whatever,
that you bring
or
forward.
even for the,
So maybe it's the word recommended.
shall bring recipients.
Bring recipients to the next gen.
Well, and if it's not coming to, then it doesn't have to say coming to the committee of the whole meeting, then it can be submitted as a report to a board meeting.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it can't be.
Well, because some of them
Unless
get
you
in
want-
car, we don't want that. to
Yeah,
be
if it's a
public.
surprise or whatever.
Yeah, well, and that's some boards do that, some. Or the report can be sent out to the board in an email that the committee has met, here are the recipients.
You want to read it, fine. If you don't, you don't. That's my thing.
But if all reports are included in a regular board agenda, all of the reports, then that would sort of give away the one.
Yes, I mean,
John Jones just won that, whatever.
so if it goes out in an email to the board as opposed to,
An email report thing. We think this person did this. Very easy.
we've got a lot to go through, so I get too bogged down in reporting here, but.
So and you ready? I've just fixed that.
So what should we put for here? Like she said, an email is good? Or
Shall notify the board of elected recipients by email?
Yeah.
That's sufficient?
or just notify?
Well, just, yeah, don't even,
Seriously,
but however,
Perfect.
we're talking,
Period.
just
Done.
Mhm,
notify
yeah,
us.
no. It's just fun to know if someone from your school won it or whatever, right? And
Because you don't want it so prescriptive, your thing.
Absolutely. Okay, so some other highlights in the appendix is that we did add a line item to the Community Engagement and Advocacy Committee. It is 8.2.1.2.4. Consider recommendations for ASBA position statement submission. So we put it down there as the Community Engagement and Advocacy Committee would take the lead on drafting or formulating possible position statements to bring forward, and then would then relay that, bring that forward to the board for discussion decision. Otherwise, the terms of reference are exactly what the terms of reference of the committees were or fleshed out. Are there any other questions on Appendix A? Yes.
So because these numbers are not aligning, I'm challenges, but that's okay. Powers and duties of the audit committee, page 2 of 8. Do we want 8 at the second last bullet, 3.2.1? Do we want meet with the division officers? Or auditors or outside counsel is necessary? Because meet the, hello, how are you? But meet with is down. Yeah, okay.
that makes sense.
Previously, there was something where I wanted to know if it was steps. And it might have been the compliance steps, but I'm not sure now because I'm having trouble finding it here. But it was like to switch first one and the third one around because it looked like we're starting with the highest escalation, put that first, and then the lowest. I'm feeling a little bit stressed to find this story. Oh, the reason I can't find it is because you sent.
Yeah, that's okay. Just tell us what section it is and Shauna and I will
Okay,
probably
so
know
in
where it is.
the email you sent, it was section 2.2.2.1.3.
What is the header
What's
of
the
the
head- yeah, what's
first?
the
You know what,
context
I
of
just
it?
said audit. I mean, I was doing this till midnight, so I didn't, like, heading, I just thought it was,
Okay, I can find it in mine.
all right, bye.
Give me 1 second.
So
There's three twos, a 1, and a 3.
reviewing the auditor's proposed audit scope and approach, is that
And I wanted point 3 to be first and point 1 to be last.
If I might be able to make a suggestion, when these policies come to a meeting, I think they should come to the COW meeting first before they come to the board meeting. Because all of these changes, we have people here for our meeting to carry on, and we're making all of these changes, and I think it's just a good idea. So,
Okay, so
Final
what was it?
approval.
I just did 2.2.2, so there's 3 twos.
Yeah.
Point 1.
Review the annual financial statements that are budget year complete budget. So basically, the committee will carry out the following responsibilities.
Okay, so yeah, I found it. So I want number 3 to first, review the annual financial statement. That makes sense.
Mhm.
That number 1. Number 2, review with management, the auditors. So that's still point 2, the results of the audit. And then the one that I think should last, if you're sort of level of responsibility escalation, then number 3 is accounting and reporting issues, including complex or unusual transactions. So that's listed first, but I think that should be last. Okay.
I hear what Trustee Martin is saying, particularly with policy 8, there was a lot of information and there's a lot of changes. And we still have 2 other appendices to go through that are brand new. So could we defer policy 8 to our COW meeting?
Then I can organize what
Possibly policy 9, depending on how you felt when you were reviewing them. The other ones should be straightforward to approve. I can tell you, so policy 8, we will defer to COW and can bring forward for final approval at our June 17th meeting. Okay, let's do that. All of policy 8. Policy 9, these are the external committees that we sit on. The only changes that were made to this document is that we removed the ones that no longer exist, which are ASCA, the County Management Committee, Linkages, McLab, PSBAA, and the Second Languages Committee. None of those committees exist anymore in terms of us having representation on them. And we added Rural Caucus, EPDP, TIBA.
One comment. EPD, so page 32 on the online agenda, which is the last of the policies, page 606, 8.3.1. It's under Enhanced Professional Development Program Committee. I don't think that one needs an alternate. It's all email based. There's no.
The only thing would be if the trustee who is that position is
Like
not here completely.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Or something, okay, sure.
If there's no other questions, can I get a motion to approve policy 9?
Just one thing where it said, acting in good faith, providing blah, 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 communicating, and the context, is act in good faith, this is 7.237 point for Shiva. Yeah,
Acting in good faith with a view to the best interest of the public.
yeah, but if you look at them, for that. Make more sense to say act in good faith. That's just provide input. Can make a note of that.
We can
It's a little-
change ing to
Act, yeah.
act and provide and communicate. Okay. Motion to approve policy 9 as amended. Sorry, I missed whose hand went up on that one. Trustee Eckert. All in favor? Yeah, that's, I noted it as on 17, which is what we're doing right now. Yeah. So policy 17, the student transportation committee. So this one we cleaned up. We had Sue, our transportation manager, sat with us to do the cleanup on this one. A couple of the things that were added, and I believe Associate Superintendent Andres, this is where your question came in, is we added some details about the non-refundable admin fee and the changes to Kindy. And I think there was a question as to whether some of that information might be better suited for the AP.
And we have to remember to update this policy at the same time with the change. So I wondered, should be all in. Because fees are regularly paid.
It was 13.
Ineligible Kindy's are charged half.
Oh, you never heard me. Yeah.
So we make sure we put it somewhere else.
Yeah, so I've got the.
I don't know, in number 10, the boarding allowance. What's the boarding allowance? It's on this page. If you look at it on the screen, it's pretty.
We don't have any of that source of revenue at all, but there is a fund source for that.
The boarding allowance is,
I'm assuming that if, let's say, a student being transported has to live in it. But we, so probably a report that something there's, I'm not sure. Yeah. But we've never ever had it. So this obviously came from, is it probably going to all the funding of it.
And it is
I
in
think
the,
it is kind of confusing.
if it's never came up. Do you see any concern? Okay, so for policy 17, we're going to strike 10 and 13, and 13 will be moved to the related AP. Any other comments on policy 17? Okay, motion to approve, Trustee O'Berman. All in favor? Okay, policy 18, We made absolutely no changes to this policy other than anywhere that it said School Act, we replaced it with Education Act.
I'll do it now.
Trustee O'Gorman. All in favor? And the same is true for policy 19 as well. With policy 19 appendix, we did have some discussion as to whether the student code of conduct should be an appendix to the policy or whether it should be moved to an AP. And partly that conversation came up because there is a parent code of conduct that is under development that will be an AP. So we wondered about putting them together as AP rather than.
Yeah, when I did that, the question was what carries more weight in the event of breach of conduct? Is it policy or is it the AP? So what I thought is I looked at this and I just called it page 1 and 2 of the appendix. Should be policy, page 3 and 4 would be your AP. One says this is what you shall do, that's your policy. The AP is in the event that you don't, this is the procedure to do. That's how I looked at that one.
One of the things, so for instance, in the Ed Act changed. It used to be section 12, which was student code of conduct, and then prior to that it was section 7, and now it's section 6E. So almost every time they do a revision of the act, they seem to change it. So it's easier to change. I guess it's quicker to change and keep the AP relevant. The other thing is that all of that would be in one place. And I'm going to suggest that this policy reference the in that way makes it joins. So I think this keeps it very carries the weight, as you said, and then changes that we make are going to be in the, because if you remember last time, I think it was also section 16, they put in responsibilities of parents, right? So again, that's part of the AP we were changing as that changed. So just to keep everything on.
So could we ask that transfer of the student code of conduct be moved to an AP and have confirmation of that at our next board meeting and
We'll bring it to the next
approve
board
this policy at the next board meeting with the reference to the new created AP at that time? Yes.
meeting. AP already exists.
Okay. But then we'll modify it with the reference and we'll approve at the June meeting. Okay. Thank you for that. That is it for the policy updates. The community engagement and advocacy.
Sorry, approving policy 19 itself though.
No, because we're going to end up referencing the AP in it. So we'll do that at the June meeting. We'll defer it to the June meeting.
Deferring that one as well.
The community engagement and advocacy committee report was included. So unless there are any specific questions, we can move on. Okay. Associate Superintendent Andres, I can turn it over to you for 11.1 financial report.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. You have a site-based allocation report from May 18, 2020. See in column K, the total discretionary funds remaining at that time. And column N, what is left to reach the $50 cap. So just a reminder that there is always an opportunity to over the cap, that the principals may request that anything over the cap be used for a particular capital expenditure. And you've got the report, the graph is showing the cap. there's no questions, do you want to go on to the bank clerk?
Doesn't seem to. Please.
And you have 3 months of bank recs there. You can pick there for February, March, or April. Bank rec, and what I usually draw your attention to is the investments, the change. Typically, it's things like interest revenue that's changing. So in the February bank rec, it's gone up a bit, 12,000 or so. I've gone up about 10,000 March. And that's 2,000. Bank recs.
Question? Right direction. Okay. 11.2, board operational overview planning stuff. Would you like to take on that?
That's
Okay. Yeah. Just as an update, following board planning session, the departments, primarily this one, it was reviewing some of the items, just trying to bring them together so that even though they were created in silos, we tried to bring them together so that all on the same page as when it came to strategic plan. Primarily we talked at social emotional learning, sure work for that. Dozens. We just want to make sure that the board priorities.
Yeah, a lot of it was to make sure as well that in fall that we are the teachers have access to materials that are online. In case we have to want to make sure that was captured as well to sure, like I said, that aligned. I can't think of the other ones. I'll just double check them.
That was primarily the ones that we were finding, but there were a couple of things that weren't lining up. So, and I think I mentioned around board planning. So what we've done is spend some time work with people to make sure that we're saying the board's priorities. That's basic.
And I think you would want to sort of an overview of the budget.
Okay, moving on to 13. All of these are information items and reports that were submitted.
Okay. Okay, no worries.
And everything that was submitted under 13 is all reports that were submitted into your agenda package. So unless there are any questions.
The new high school still is a possibility there will be a P3, is that I understand what they were doing.
So we have written, right, as Robert Brown has given us the body of the letter, we'll send it out officially to Mr. Center. Got a phone conversation with our employee Friday. See if there's a possibility that it doesn't happen. One of the things that the other schools don't have that we do is that we could approve that expansion down the road. And if it is a P3, then how do you almost become a single source for the next contractor? And so our that's not there. And
Now, first,
30-year maintenance lease. Now someone's coming to build another section where I not have that same.
So it's going to be reviewed by audit firms, state firms. So that's our
next strategy, just to say financially this doesn't make sense. In 10 years time you need this addition, and you're tied in to that single source, like Bill said. Or perhaps that company isn't even, who knows, in business. That's the angle.
So we have a little leverage, do we? We have a little leverage.
Yeah, we're
do
trying
we?
everything we can.
Does not finish playing for.
Keep it close.
Just say one thing, just about the, if you're done with that, about the city, the joint use agreement with the city. You can call, the city of Leduc gave us access to the LRC to our schools for free. And so I had a conversation with them, and they would need to send that for 1 year. At this point, we all dropped with COVID. We had been working on a joint agreement with that, and by the wayside with everything else down here. So it won't be my responsibility next year, but someone in my position will be working on trying to do a joint use agreement, and it's a very big project. I have to say that they're hoping to have it done by the end of 2021. But
And to wrap up the information items, there are a few good news stories in there. The very last item highlights the 17,000 and change dollars that was raised by Black Gold School Division through the Terry Fox Run. That's wonderful to see. And the little over $2 million from the accelerated capital maintenance and renewal funding. So there'll be projects that are going that.
if I could just make a comment on that, when it's called the CRA came out, CMR, CRA is another organization. That was a word. Came out, you know, the guidelines for it was saying basically it was eligible for a IMR project, then it would be. And as you know, in IMR projects, a minimum of 30% has to be capital. So when the Q&A came out on this and we looked at it, we had understood that it didn't all be capital projects, but I even had mentioned to the finance department, I was surprised with that. Now they've come back and they said it has to be capital projects. The reason for that obviously is it won't show an expenditure in here, and they're trying to keep their expenditures down as much as possible. So finance and facilities are going back and reviewing it, possibly can come up with capital projects of 2.2 billion. So we're going to have to probably, Ralph's been in conversation with Alberta, and it will probably be less than the 2.2 million because of it can't be all capital. However, they're going to deduct that IMR in the future. This wasn't a giveaway kind of thing, so I don't think we should do badly in our department. So it might be maybe $500,000 less by the time figured out project. But it's not money lost. It's just money that earned.
Okay. On that note, if there are no further questions, we will have a motion, please, to return to the camera. Trustee Martin.
I know, Andrew watching.
I know, and it has to direct.
Yeah.